Today's reading is from Rays of the One Light, Weekly Commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. In the Gospel of St. Luke, chapter 15, we read the famous parable of the prodigal son. Jesus tells of the man who took the wealth bestowed on him by his father and squandered it in foreign lands, where he fell into evil ways. At last, repentant, he returned to his father's home. When his father saw him, he was, Jesus tells us, moved with compassion, and ran and fell upon his neck and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee. I am no longer worthy to be called thy son. But the father said to his servants, Fetch quickly the best robe and put it on him, and give him a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet. And bring out the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and make merry. Because this my son was dead, and has come to life again. He was lost and is found. And they began to make merry. Small-hearted human beings, identified as they are with their little egos, give exaggerated importance to any slight they receive from others. Thus they imagine God like them to be petty, unpardoning, and vindictive. In God's eyes, however, when human beings go astray, there is nothing to forgive. All of us are aspects only of his own self. He who made us resides in us. He is not far away in some far-off heaven. His call to us always is to return to our own home within. The way of return is described in the Bhagavad Gita in the 6th chapter. Supreme blessedness is that yogi's who has completely calmed his mind, controlled his ego-active tendencies, and purged himself of desire, thereby attaining oneness with Brahma, the infinite spirit. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Good morning, everyone. As was mentioned this morning, last night was a beautiful Kriya ceremony here last night, and we are enjoying the benefits of that in these beautiful flowers and vibrations in this room. And it stands in fairly stark contrast with a very confusing world out there, and I mean world, the entire world, not just our country. It's something that's been going on for some time. Paramahansa Yogananda explains, as they do in India, about the yuga cycles, and that these are cycles of time, and that we've come out of a time of Kali Yuga, which is an age of institutions, material. The world sees everything in terms of material realities, and materialism is quite strong. And we're going into an age and are at the beginning of the age of Dwapara, which is the age of energy. And thankfully, we're in the ascendant cycle, so it'll keep getting better. But this age of Dwapara is no picnic either, because it's a time of high energy. It's the age of energy, and we've come to understand energy in technology, in our bodies, but things are moving very quickly and changing constantly. So there's no security in this age. He called it a Rajasic age, meaning an age of high energy, but not necessarily focused energy. And yet it's also an age when he was able to come and share these teachings of Kriya Yoga so we could understand life in terms of energy. We could understand the energies going on within us. The kingdom of heaven is within us. It says in the teachings and the scriptures of East and West. And these teachings can help bring us within, which is our true reality. Everything else is a reflection. The confusion we see around us is a reflection of confusion that is within us and within most people. And this will begin to change with time as we change and as we ascend. And until then, the forces of materialism and institutions of the past are having sort of their last gasp before the age of energy and trying to hang on for dear life. This is normal. When we can stand back from it and we can see it. I remember in the early 70s, Swami Kriyananda was addressing. Swami Kriyananda is Ananda's founder and Yogananda's direct disciple, whose teachings we practice here, Yogananda's. And in any case, people were concerned about energy and how is the world going to sustain itself with energy being depleted. And he said, well, we're in an ascendant age, and we will find solutions, things we don't see now. Think of all the things we're using today that we didn't have 30 years ago or 20 years ago. There's so much more wisdom and discovery that will take place in the times to come, because thankfully we're in that ascendant age. But in the meantime, how do we deal with this insecurity and this confusion that's there? It helps to just have the bird's eye view of what's happening so we don't get so caught up in it. But as I was just quoting to a friend the other day, Yogananda talks in his autobiography, he quotes the Vedas as saying that a man or woman of God is one who is soft as the flower when it concerns kindness, and strong as thunder when it concerns principles. And these inner practices can help us discern between preference and principle and understand when it is right to stand up for principles that are important: kindness, goodness, dignity. It's no coincidence that this morning affirmation was on moral vigor. It takes moral vigor to stand for those things that are really important in life and stand by them, strong as thunder. I love that phrase. That's what it's going to take for us to discern what's really important and then to stand up for it, but not just to stand up for it, to live it, to be kindness, to be goodness, to be dignified. And by that example, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, they were perfect examples of that. They didn't just preach love, they were love. And it was very, very difficult. It was a test. They each tested themselves on that principle constantly. They were vigilant about it. And that's what it will take in this time to build our inner strength, and having that inner life, having that life of Kriya Yoga and meditation, whatever path you may practice, that is where we begin to contact the divine that is within us, and then learn to live from that center. So what about this poor prodigal son we talked about this morning in the reading? Well, of course, that's us. We're all that prodigal son and daughter. We've sort of gone away from that center, gotten lost in the confusion and delusion of this world, you might say. And yet, how do we find our way back? Well, Yogananda describes how he met this man in Oregon who had a very wicked son. And he was, lamenting about the son and what to do about these terrible things that the son was thinking and doing. And Yogananda said, well, I have an idea. He said, get 2 or 3 of your strongest friends to come and help you, bind your son's hands and feet, put a big strong fire in your stove, and then just throw him into the stove to burn up. And this man said, what are you, crazy? No father would do that to their son, or anyone else for that matter. And Yogananda said, well, if you wouldn't do that to your wicked son, why would the Heavenly Father do that to any of his children? It's a concept. Again, that comes from the age of institution and dogmatism, that kind of thinking. And believe me, it wasn't just in the West, it was in the East also. In the East, it went more towards superstition. In the West, it became very dogmatic. And so, there's a story I've shared with some of you, but our daughter, Gita, when she was about 10 years old, she and her brother, her older brother, went to Riemann's parents for Easter break. And his parents were devout Catholics, and they took them to Easter service, Easter Mass. And we heard this story both from Grandpa and from Gita's point of view. Grandpa told us later, he said he was really proud of her. He asked her after service how she liked it. And she said, well, I liked it well enough, but I didn't agree with everything the priest said. And Grandpa said, well, what didn't you agree with? And she said, well, he talked about that there was, sins you could commit that would damn you to hell forever, an eternity. She said, I believe in a forgiving God. And he, notwithstanding the fact that he was a devout Catholic, he was also a thoughtful man, and he was rather proud that she thought about it that way. And then when she, age 10, shared the story with us, she said, I wanted to talk about karma with him, but I didn't think he'd understand. Well, we all understand instinctively, don't we, that God is a forgiving God. God will wait forever for us to return home. So how is it that we get so far away from our home in God? It's just a mystery, isn't it? Well, it sort of isn't, Life for most people and for all of us to some degree, if we're here, we're not perfect, so all of us to some degree, we react to something, and then we react to that reaction and react to the next reaction, and it goes further like that. Swami Kriyananda had the example of being invited to the Joffrey Ballet, which was modern ballet, and he found it, he said they were beautiful dancers, but it was so dissatisfying because they would make motions, and then more motions going out, and then more motions going out, and they never came back to their center. And the spiritual life is about coming back to our center, letting God be the touchstone, the kingdom of heaven that is within us, checking everything, referring everything back to that. And instead of just, in chemistry, isn't it, that chain reaction, eventually it blows up on you? That's not a healthy, balanced way to approach it. And so that's what happens in our lives. We take a step, we have a desire We act on that desire, even in the tiniest of ways, and that takes us to another desire and a bigger desire. And before you know it, we walk into a karmic bomb. Something erupts that we could have avoided if we hadn't, sort of followed that out there. It reminds me of that other story in ancient India about the disciple who was from a wealthy family, and he was tired of, helping his parents sustain their mansion and their wealth and taking care of it all the time. So he left all that behind him and renounced it, and he went to live in his guru's ashram, where he found himself being given duties of taking care of the ashram. And after a while, he started sort of being annoyed at having to do all of these maintenance things in the ashram. And he went to his guru and he said he'd had enough of ashram life. He was going to go off on his own. And the guru hinted at him, watch your critical mind, it will get you into trouble. And he went anyway. And all he took with him was the loincloth he was wearing and one extra little rag for a second loincloth and a begging bowl to be able to drink water. The first night he goes off in the mountain and he finds a spot above a village under a tree, and he sets himself up, hangs out his little second loincloth and puts his begging bowl aside, and he goes to sleep. And he wakes up in the morning, and a mouse had eaten holes into the second loincloth, and a monkey had taken his begging bowl away. So all he had left now was the loincloth on him, and he was frustrated. And a villager walked by and asked what's up, and he told him what happened, and the villager said, that's not a problem. All you need is a cat to keep the mice away. So he says, where am I going to get a cat? He said, well, I happen to have one. I'll bring you one. So he brought him a cat. And so the cat chased the mice away, but the cat needed to eat. And he didn't have any milk for the cat. So the villagers started bringing him milk. And then after a while, they got tired of doing that. They said, get your own cow. And he said, well, how can I get a cow? I don't own or have anything. They said, we'll give you a cow. And just stop asking us for milk. So they gave him a cow, and then the cow needed to graze, and so he let the cow graze on the villagers' lands, and they got tired of that, and they said, get your own land. So, well, how can I get land? I don't own anything. Well, they gave him some land. And so then the land needed to be taken care of, so he borrowed the villagers' children to help him take care of their land. And the villagers got tired of that. They said, we need our own children to help us take care of our land. Get your own children. How am I going to do that? We'll get you a wife. Well, at that point, his guru intuitively understood his predicament from a distance and came back to him and see, where did this all get you? And Rama said, oh, master. He said, the cat needed a mouse to chase, and the mouse needed milk, and, he went down the whole thing. And he said it was all for a rag. Well, that's our lives. One thing takes responsibility for the next thing, takes responsibility for the next. And if we are not in remembrance as we're going along, we suddenly find ourselves way out there in a different place than we intended to be, because that force of that we tapped into that takes us away, that field of consciousness, that stream of consciousness that we were tapping into, that takes us away from our memory of our home in God, has a power to it, and it will take us far, far away, thousands, millions of incarnations away. And yet the moment we remember, we can get right back to that center. Yogananda said, the time to know God is now. We can do that just in that remembrance. And that remembrance, as all of us know who are trying to meditate, it's not easy. You have to keep working at it. It's like Hong Saw, the technique of meditation that we do. Our thoughts get away from us, we bring it back to the breath. Hong Saw, that single pointedness. Similarly, just in our daily lives, just don't worry about it, that you forgot, that you got involved in something you didn't intend to, and that you're not happy because you're in situations that you didn't intend to be in. Don't worry about it. Just come back. Just keep bringing it back to God remembrance.
Let's listen to these words from Yogananda's Book of Prayer Demands, Whispers from Eternity. O thou thief of hearts, the rays of joy spreading in the firmament of my inner silence heralded the promise of thine approach. Many nights in twinkling garments, many dawns donning green veils of glittering dewy pearls, many twilights dancing in cadence with cowbells, many years decked with spring blossoms, summer zephyrs, diamond icicles, and shining garments of fluttering rain that blushed with joyous expectancy, all waited for thee in the bower of memory. But the wolf of time stole upon thy devotees. Now they are no more, and I am left alone, all alone, and love for fickle festivities has flown. Yet I will travel with the ever-roaming hours in search of thy path. I mind not if I must wait even 1,000 millennia, for I know I shall catch thee, O thief of hearts, sometime at eternity's end.